I took the job because my bank account had reached the point where every purchase felt like a decision. Gas or groceries, phone bill or electric bill. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't starving, but I was close enough to both that I stopped opening some envelopes when they arrived. The city utility contract paid almost double what I was making doing residential telecom work. The catch was the schedule. Midnight to 8 in the morning, 6 nights a week. Underground infrastructure inspection. Most people don't think much about what exists beneath the city. Roads and buildings get attention. The stuff underneath doesn't. Miles of abandoned communication lines. Old relay chambers. Maintenance passages built decades ago and forgotten by everyone except a few departments buried deep in municipal records. My assignment sounded simple. Walk designated tunnel sections. Check environmental sensors. Verify structural conditions. Document water intrusion. Photograph damage. Submit reports. The work was boring, which was exactly what I needed. Boring work pays bills. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The first month was uneventful. I developed routines. Coffee from the same gas station every night. A breakfast sandwich around 5 in the morning. Podcast downloaded before every shift. The tunnels themselves weren't particularly interesting. Concrete, dust, rust, occasional standing water. Everything smelled faintly metallic. The city provided tablet computers loaded with route maps. Each inspection route was color-coded. Follow the route. Check assigned points. Upload observations. Go home. Easy. The first time I saw C9, I didn't know it was unusual. The route map displayed a short connector corridor between 2 relay chambers. Nothing special. Just another gray line on a screen. I followed it, took my readings, checked a damaged conduit bracket, finished my report. The next night, I was assigned a different sector. While reviewing maps during a break, I noticed something odd. The connector corridor wasn't there anymore. At first, I assumed I was looking at the wrong section. Then I checked yesterday's report. My notes referenced utility passage C9. The map attached to the report showed no such corridor. I spent 10 minutes comparing documents before deciding the software had glitched. City systems weren't exactly cutting edge. I forgot about it. A week later, I encountered C9 again. Different location, different district, same designation, same corridor code. That caught my attention. Utility passage identifiers weren't supposed to move. They're fixed. Once assigned, they stay assigned. That's the whole point. I checked the map. According to the current version, C9 connected 2 equipment rooms on the east side of downtown. The problem was that I'd previously walked a corridor carrying the same identifier nearly 3 miles away. I mentioned it to another inspector named Victor. Victor had worked underground infrastructure for almost 20 years. He stopped chewing his sandwich when I brought up C9. That reaction was immediate enough to stand out. What about it? I think the mapping system reused an ID. Victor stared at me, then looked away. Don't worry about it. Why not? He shrugged. Because every new guy worries about it. That answer annoyed me. That doesn't explain anything. It isn't supposed to. Then he changed the subject. I noticed he left the break room early. The conversation stayed with me, mostly because it felt rehearsed, like he'd had it before, several times. Over the next month, I started saving copies of route maps. Nothing formal, just screenshots. The habit began as curiosity, then it became something else. Because the screenshots didn't match, the same corridor appeared in different locations depending on when I viewed the records. Not renamed, not relocated through construction, actually relocated. Entire sections of tunnel diagrams shifted around it. At first I thought I was misreading the plans. Then I started comparing timestamps. The discrepancies were real. One archived blueprint placed C9 beneath a courthouse. Another version from the same year placed it beneath a hospital. A third placed it beneath a rail terminal. Same date, same file number, different location. I brought the issue to a supervisor. She looked at the maps for less than 10 seconds. Then she closed the folder. Don't spend time on historical mapping inconsistencies. Inconsistencies. Legacy documentation isn't always reliable. That answer should have satisfied me. It didn't. Because the inconsistencies weren't historical. They were current. The files kept changing, and eventually I noticed something worse. The reports changed too, including my own. I remember a maintenance note involving water seepage near Chamber 41B. 2 weeks later, the report still existed. Same date, same inspection, same signature, but the location had changed to C9. I hadn't written that. I knew I hadn't. Yet every official copy showed the revised version. I started keeping printed records at home. That was probably the point where curiosity became obsession. The strange thing is that obsession rarely feels irrational while you're inside it. It feels responsible, reasonable, like you're the only person paying attention. Every contradiction convinced me I was getting closer to an answer. Instead, I was getting closer to something else. One night around 3 in the morning, I entered a relay sector beneath the financial district. The route should have taken 40 minutes. Halfway through the inspection, I reached an unfamiliar corridor. No warning, no transition, just a section of concrete passage I didn't recognize. The sign above the entrance read, Utility Passage C9. Fresh lettering, new paint. The corridor extended farther than it should have. The city's underground network is complicated, but not endless. You learn to estimate distance. This tunnel seemed wrong. Too long, too straight. The fluorescent lights continued far beyond visibility. I checked my tablet. The map showed a 30-foot connector. While I was looking, it stretched hundreds of feet, maybe more. I walked 20 yards inside, then stopped. Not because I saw anything, because my tablet vibrated. A route recalculation notification appeared. The map refreshed. C9 disappeared. The screen now showed a solid wall where I was standing. I looked up. The corridor remained. I looked down again. No corridor, just concrete. The feeling that hit me then wasn't fear. Not immediately. It was disorientation. The same feeling you get when a GPS insists you're somewhere impossible. Except I wasn't looking at a screen. I was standing inside the contradiction. I backed out, finished my shift, went home. I barely slept. The next night, I returned. The corridor was gone. Continues naturally into a 30 to 40 minute escalating investigation narrative involving changing blueprints, tunnel camera anomalies, rewritten municipal records, workers who vanish from infrastructure databases, evidence that C9 exists wherever documentation places it, and a contaminated ending in which the narrator discovers new city planning documents already listing him as a permanent asset assigned to Utility Passage C9, while security footage continues showing him performing inspections. Underground during hours he knows he is at home. The corridor was gone. Not sealed, not demolished. Gone. I spent nearly 40 minutes walking the sector where I'd seen it. The wall where the entrance had been looked old. Not recently poured. Not patched. The concrete had the same discoloration and water stains as the surrounding tunnel sections. If someone had shown me the area without context, I would have believed it had always looked that way. That bothered me more than if I'd found evidence of construction. Construction leaves traces. Permits, dust, equipment. This left nothing. I checked my route history. The tablet GPS log showed I had never entered C9. According to the system, I had spent the entire inspection inside approved sectors. No deviation, no anomaly, no unexplained corridor. The next morning, I drove home in silence. I remember sitting in my apartment parking lot for nearly 10 minutes with the engine running. I was trying to decide whether I was actually seeing something unusual or whether exhaustion was affecting my memory. Night shifts do strange things to people. You lose track of days. You wake up confused. You start measuring time through meals instead of clocks. I wanted a normal explanation. I still did at that point. 3 nights later, I found another one. Another C9, different location. This one appeared beneath a municipal records building downtown. The corridor entrance sat between 2 relay rooms. The sign looked old, not newly installed. The paint was faded. The bolts were rusted. Everything about it suggested it had been there for decades. Yet I knew with complete certainty that it hadn't existed on previous inspections. I photographed the entrance. 27 photos, from multiple angles, with timestamps enabled. I emailed copies to my personal account before leaving the tunnel. When I checked the files at home, every image still existed. But the sign was gone. The corridor remained. The entrance remained. The The identifying marker had disappeared. It looked like a normal service passage. The metadata showed no evidence of editing. That was when I started buying my own equipment. Not expensive gear, just enough to create independent records. A handheld GPS logger, a digital voice recorder, a disposable film camera. The film camera probably sounds strange. Most people don't use them anymore. But digital records had become difficult to trust. I wanted something physical, something harder to alter. The first roll came back a week later. Most images were normal tunnel photographs, conduit racks, utility boxes, relay cabinets. Then I reached the photos from the C9 corridor. I expected to see an empty passage. Instead, I found something worse. The photographs showed additional doors. Not dramatic doors, not mysterious doors, just ordinary utility access doors lining the corridor walls. The problem was that I hadn't seen them. There had been no doors when I walked through, yet the photographs clearly showed them. 6 on each side, numbered sequentially. C9A, C9B, C9C, and so on. The numbering continued farther than the frame could capture. I went back the next night. The doors were there, every single one. I remember standing motionless for several minutes, trying to convince myself I had simply overlooked them. But I knew I hadn't. You don't accidentally miss 12 steel doors, especially in a narrow tunnel. I checked the first one, locked. The second, locked. The third, locked. The fourth opened, only a few inches. Inside was a storage room. At least that's what it appeared to be initially. Metal shelves, boxes, dust, nothing unusual. Then I looked closer. The boxes carried dates, not inventory numbers. Dates, hundreds of labels, thousands. Each box marked with a specific day. Years of them, decades. Every shelf organized chronologically. I pull one down. March 14th, 2003. The box contained records, traffic reports, utility permits, building inspections, city maintenance logs. Everything generated on that day, or at least copies of it. I checked another. September 8th, 1996. Same thing. Different date. Different records. The room looked like a storage archive for time itself. I know how ridiculous that sounds. It's the only description that fits. I left immediately. When I returned with Victor the following night, the room contained electrical equipment. Nothing else. No shelves. No boxes. No dates. Victor seemed relieved. Not surprised. Relieved. As if he had expected that outcome. "What did you think was in here?" he asked. I considered telling him. Instead, I said nothing, because his reaction suggested he already knew. Weeks passed. The pattern continued. The corridor appeared, disappeared, reappeared elsewhere. Maps changed. Reports changed. Sometimes entire sections of infrastructure seemed to reorganize around it. Then the corridor began appearing in places that weren't underground. That was new, and significantly worse. The first instance happened during a rainstorm. I was leaving a grocery store around noon. My day off. Normal daylight. Normal traffic. Normal weather. I loaded groceries into my truck and looked across the parking lot. For a moment, I saw an entrance. Concrete walls. Utility lighting. A sign reading C9. Positioned between two storefronts where no such structure should have existed. I blinked. It disappeared. The stores remained. Everything looked normal again. The experience lasted perhaps 2 seconds. Maybe less. I told myself it was stress. Nothing more. Then it happened again. A week later. At a gas station. Then outside my apartment complex. Then reflected in a train window. Always briefly. Always unexpectedly. The corridor wasn't staying underground anymore. Or perhaps my ability to notice it wasn't. Around that time, I began finding references to myself inside municipal records. The first example seemed harmless. A work order listing me as an inspector on a project completed 6 years before I was hired. Clerical error. Strange, but possible. Then I found another, and another, and another. Soon dozens existed. Then hundreds. Archived maintenance records described inspections I never performed. Projects I never visited. Equipment I never saw. All signed under my name. The dates stretched backward. Years. Then decades. Eventually, I found one from 1988. I wasn't born until the mid-1990s. Yet there it was. My name. My signature. my employee identification number, everything matching current records. I started comparing signatures. They were identical, not similar. Identical. The kind of identical that's impossible when a forgery is repeated over decades. My supervisor stopped answering questions. Victor avoided me. Other inspectors changed the subject whenever C9 came up. The entire department seemed aware of something. Nobody wanted to discuss it. One morning, I found an old maintenance journal inside a relay chamber. The notebook belonged to a worker named Leonard Crane. Inspection dates ranged from 1977 through 1980. Most entries were routine: water intrusion, cable replacement, ventilation issues, normal maintenance observations. Then the final pages changed. The handwriting became erratic. Not dramatic, just increasingly tired, increasingly distracted. One entry caught my attention. C9 appeared beside Chamber 12 today. Third location this month. Another. Maps changed again. Then another. Personnel records show I transferred to C9 division. There is no C9 division. The final completed entry consisted of one sentence. If anyone finds this, check whether you're already assigned there. No further writing followed. Personnel records showed Leonard Crane resigned shortly afterward. No forwarding address. No retirement documentation. No death certificate. Nothing. The file simply stopped, the same way dozens of others had stopped. That discovery convinced me to examine employee databases. I wish I hadn't. The city maintained decades of archived personnel information. Thousands of workers. Thousands of records. I searched specifically for individuals who had documented C9. There were more than I expected. Far more. Every decade contained them. Inspectors, surveyors, contractors, engineers, archivists, people from entirely different departments, different generations. Same pattern. All became involved. All generated increasing amounts of documentation. And eventually all developed the same personnel status. Transferred. Not retired. Not terminated. Transferred. Destination. C9. No department description attached. No supervisor listed. Just C9. The transfer dates usually represented the final update in their employment histories. After that, the records continued, which didn't make sense. Payroll adjustments, performance reviews, equipment requests, attendance logs. The files suggested those employees remained active long after disappearing from normal city operations. Some records extended 30 years beyond the person's documented existence. The system treated them as current workers, current assets, current personnel. The terminology varied. The meaning didn't. I was reading files that described people continuing to work after they had vanished. And then I found my own. Employee transfer request. Status, pending. Destination, C9. Expected processing date, October 17th. 3 weeks away. I printed everything. Made copies. Store backups. By then, I understood the pattern well enough to know the documents wouldn't remain stable. I was right. Within days, the transfer request disappeared. But the date remained in my head. October 17th. 3 weeks. The closer it got, the stranger things became. My apartment security cameras began recording activity while I slept. Not figures. Not intruders. Me. The footage showed me leaving the apartment around 2 a.m., driving away, returning before dawn. The problem was that I remembered none of it, and the bedroom camera simultaneously showed me sleeping. Both recordings existed. Both contained valid timestamps. Neither appeared altered. For several nights, I tried staying awake. Energy drinks, coffee, cold showers, anything to avoid sleeping. Every attempt failed. I would check the clock. Then suddenly hours had passed. Missing time, always the same block. Approximately 2 a.m. through 4 a.m. The period when C9 most frequently appeared. I began finding dirt on my boots, tunnel dust on clothing, maintenance tags on my truck, small signs suggesting I had been somewhere, done something, performed work. The evidence accumulated. The memories never did. And then October 17th arrived. I didn't go to work. I called in sick, turned off my phone, locked my doors, closed every curtain. I intended to spend the entire day inside. If C9 wanted me underground, I wouldn't cooperate. That plan lasted until 2:14 a.m. because at exactly 2:14, someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 slow knocks. Nothing aggressive. Nothing urgent. Just deliberate. Measured. Patient. I checked the peephole and saw myself For a few seconds, I genuinely thought I was looking at a reflection. My apartment hallway had mirrors at both ends. That was my first explanation. A reflection. A trick of the angle. Then the figure outside moved. I didn't. The person beyond the door tilted his head slightly. The same habit I have when I'm trying to read something from a distance. My stomach dropped. I stepped backward from the peephole. The knocking resumed. 3 slow knocks. Not harder. Not louder. Exactly the same. The consistency somehow made it worse. I called 911. I wish I could tell you the operator helped. The call connected. I heard static. Then a woman answered. But instead of asking what my emergency was, she said, "Utility passage C9 maintenance line." I hung up immediately. The phone displayed no active call history. The emergency call never appeared in the log. The knocking stopped. Silence settled over the apartment. I waited nearly 20 minutes before checking again. The hallway was empty. No figure. No movement. Nothing. I barely slept after that. Actually, that's not true. I don't think I slept at all. At least not intentionally. Morning arrived. The sun came up. The apartment looked normal. Everything should have felt better. It didn't, because the date had arrived. The transfer date, October 17th, the day listed on the personnel record. Around noon, I received an email from the city. Subject line, employee status update. For a moment, I thought it might be related to payroll or scheduling. Instead, the message contained only one attachment. A PDF. No text. No explanation. I opened it. Personnel transfer confirmation. Employee, Aaron Mills. Status, processed. Destination, utility passage C9. Effective date, October 17th. The document carried official formatting, official signatures, official department seals. Everything appeared legitimate. I called Human Resources. The representative who answered sounded confused. According to her, I was no longer assigned to underground infrastructure. In fact, she couldn't determine my current department at all. My employee profile existed. My payroll account existed. My benefits remained active. But my supervisory structure had vanished. No manager, no division, no office, no location. The system showed me as active personnel without an assigned department. When she tried opening additional records, the call disconnected. She never returned my voicemail. By evening, I had made a decision. I was finished investigating, finished documenting, finished collecting evidence. The pattern never stopped. Every answer generated additional questions. Every record led deeper. I wanted out. I began packing. Nothing dramatic, just enough to leave the city. A change of location felt reasonable. Maybe distance would matter. Maybe whatever was happening depended on proximity. By midnight, my truck was loaded. At 1:30 a.m., I started driving south. The weather was terrible. Heavy rain, low visibility, almost no traffic. The interstate stretched empty beneath the headlights. For nearly an hour, everything seemed normal. Then I passed a highway sign. Exit C9. I remember staring at it as I drove past, because I knew that exit didn't exist. I had used that interstate dozens of times. There was no exit C9. I checked my mirrors. The sign remained visible behind me, reflecting in the rain. White letters. Black background. Exit C9. The next sign appeared 12 miles later. Exit C9. Then another. Exit C9. Every exit marker displayed the same designation. No town names. No route numbers. Just C9. At some point, I stopped trying to rationalize it. The signs weren't the frightening part. The frightening part was that they felt familiar. Like infrastructure I had somehow overlooked for years. The same feeling the corridor always produced. Recognition without memory. Around 2:14 a.m., my GPS recalculated. The navigation screen froze, then displayed a route. Destination, C9. I had entered no destination. The route distance read 0 miles. Estimated arrival. Current location. I pulled onto the shoulder immediately. The truck skidded slightly on wet pavement. I shut off the GPS, turned off my phone, sat there listening to rain strike the windshield. That's when I noticed another vehicle parked farther ahead. A maintenance truck, city utility markings, amber hazard lights flashing. The truck looked abandoned. No movement inside, no driver visible. Against my better judgment, I walked toward it. The driver's door stood open. The interior light illuminated paperwork scattered across the seat. Inspection forms, maintenance logs, personnel documents. Every page referenced utility passage C9. Most carried different names, different dates, different decades. One photograph slipped from the stack when I picked it up. A group picture, 5 workers standing underground. The image looked old, late 70s maybe. The photograph quality wasn't great. Yet one face stood out immediately. Mine, not similar, not resembling. Mine, the same face, the same features, the same expression, standing among workers photographed years before my birth. I dropped the photograph. For several seconds, I simply stared at it lying in rainwater. My brain kept searching for an explanation. Relative, coincidence, forgery, anything. Nothing fit. The truck radio activated. A burst of static, then a voice. Not distorted, not threatening. Professional, routine, like dispatch traffic. Personnel arrival confirmed. Static followed. Then another voice responded. Prepare reassignment documentation. I ran back to my truck. I don't remember making the decision. Instinct took over. I drove. Fast. Far faster than conditions justified. I spent the next 2 days moving between cheap motels. No fixed destination. No plan. Just distance. Everywhere I stopped, evidence waited. A maintenance report beneath a motel room door. An employee badge on a gas station counter. A printed map folded inside a diner menu. Always C9. Always references to me. Eventually I realized something. The documents weren't following me. They were appearing before I arrived. That distinction mattered, because it suggested the records already knew where I would go, as though my movement existed inside the system before I made it. That realization broke something in me. Not dramatically, not all at once, just enough. Enough that I stopped searching for explanations, stopped believing I could escape. I returned home 3 weeks later, not because I felt safe, because I was tired. Running hadn't changed anything. The apartment remained exactly as I'd left it, except for a cardboard file box sitting in the center of the living room. No shipping label, no return address, no markings, just a plain records box. I almost left it unopened. Curiosity won again. It always did. Inside were hundreds of personnel files. Every investigator, every worker, every person I'd ever identified as connected to C9. Their records filled the box. Transfer documents, attendance logs, performance evaluations, equipment requests, years of paperwork. Some files extended decades beyond disappearance dates. Others continued into the present. Near the bottom, I found my own. The folder was much thicker than the rest. Thousands of pages, most documented events that had never happened. Future inspections, future maintenance schedules, future conversations, future reports. I spent hours reading. Near the end, I found the final page. Employee status review. Current status. Present. Location. Utility passage C9. No date. No signature. No explanation. Just that. The same word that kept appearing throughout all of this. Present. I don't know exactly what utility passage C9 is. I don't think it's a tunnel. I don't think it's a physical place. At least not entirely. The corridor seems to exist wherever records place it. Maps create routes to it. Documents create evidence for it. Personnel files create workers for it. The infrastructure follows afterward, or appears to. I still receive occasional updates. A revised inspection schedule, an amended personnel evaluation, an inventory report. The dates continue moving forward. The records continue growing. According to the newest documents, I've been assigned there for 14 years. According to another, I haven't arrived yet. Both versions exist simultaneously. What worries me most isn't that the paperwork keeps appearing. It's that parts of it are becoming familiar. Recently, I found myself recognizing locations described in reports I know I never wrote. I know where certain relay chambers are located. I know maintenance procedures I was never trained to perform. I know access codes that don't officially exist. Sometimes I catch myself remembering shifts that never happened. Entire workdays, routine inspections, conversations with employees whose personnel files ended decades ago. The memories feel ordinary. That's the dangerous part. They're not dramatic. They're mundane, comfortably mundane, like remembering a normal work week. Last night, I woke up at 2:14 a.m. I was sitting at my kitchen table, still wearing my clothes. A maintenance flashlight rested beside me, so did a completed inspection report. The handwriting was mine. The signature was mine. The report listed no location except one. Utility passage C9. Status: operational. Personnel present. I don't remember filling it out. I don't remember leaving my apartment. Maybe I never did. Maybe the report appeared on its own. I honestly can't tell anymore. What I do know is that every month the personnel file gets larger. Every month additional years are added. And every month more of those future records stop feeling unfamiliar. I started this account because I wanted evidence outside the system. Something that couldn't be corrected afterward. Something that couldn't quietly update itself. Maybe that's possible. Maybe it isn't. If you're reading this years from now and find references to utility passage C9 in infrastructure records, maintenance databases, planning documents, or city archives, don't assume it's a clerical error. And if you ever come across paperwork carrying your own name before you've signed it, stop looking. Because everyone whose file I found eventually ended up with the same status. Not missing, not deceased, not terminated, present. And the worst part is that I'm no longer completely certain that's a warning. Some nights, when I wake up with tunneled dust on my boots and inspection logs on my table, another thought slips in. A thought that feels less like fear and more like recognition. The feeling that I've already been there. The feeling that I've always been there. The feeling that somewhere inside utility passage C9, a version of me is finishing another shift and filing another report. And according to the paperwork that arrived this morning, he's expecting me tomorrow.